A lot of these enforcement cases breach the accountability obligation, meaning that these organizations lack appropriate policies or they do not even have any kind of policies or procedures in their organization. Adapt your SOPs to match your policies as well, so that the SOPs, you can use it to train your ground staff. They don't want to hear your legal jargon. They want to know, what do I do if I come across a photocopied NRIC? It says that the PDPA ought to be part of enterprise risk management frameworks. You need to understand the regulation and how it can impact your business if you're not in compliance. And you can only alert your organization if you have done a compliance assessment. Do you know that every year you can do a compliance assessment? You can use it as a little audit on your current data protection status.
So a study by Business Informati found that responsible management of environmental and social issues and their governance creates a business ethos and environment that delivers improved financial performance. And they found the companies with the strongest governance processes exceeded the average by 8.5% per year.
You can get into your DPO inbox, and if you look, identify risk, if you click identify risk, the 4 areas of risk management will come up. This will help you in managing your risk.
Thanks for joining us for our webinar. We will be getting started very soon. While you're waiting, why not take a few minutes to set things up to get the most of your webinar experience? First, check your internet connection. It's always best to use a wired connection. But if that's not possible, use the fastest Wi-Fi you can access. You can use an online speed test to see how strong your connection is. Speedup.me is a good one to try if you have a slower speed. There's a few things you can do to improve the experience. First, ask others that might be sharing the network to avoid bandwidth-intensive activities like streaming video. If you're at home, check with family members and ask them to avoid activities like Netflix or gaming. The other thing to check to optimize the experience is your computer. Check to make sure your system isn't updating or downloading large files. Google Drive and Dropbox syncing can take a lot of internet capacity on your computer. Turn off any extra programs, especially tabs in your browser that might be open. During the webinar, if you have any issues with either the audio or the video, a simple refresh of your Zoom application will usually resolve things. Please note that this webinar will be recorded. However, all participants' video and mic will be disabled throughout the session. If you have any tech issues, use the private chat feature so that the administrator can address those. We ask that you keep your comments positive and the chat on topic for the webinar. If you have a question that you'd like answered, please share it in the Q&A section. You can do so by clicking on the Q&A icon on the button panel. We will be getting started shortly. So this is a good time to close the door or even run to the washroom or grab a cup of coffee. Enjoy the webinar. It will start shortly.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today at our webinar. We'd like to introduce you to our Director and Assistant Treasurer of Singapore India Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dr. Zaba Ali, who is a Chartered Accountant with over 40 years of external, internal audit and management consultant experiences globally. He's also currently the Managing Partner of Raffles CA LLP Singapore. So Dr. Zaba Ali, please.
A very good afternoon. Hello, everyone. I hope everybody is, after lunch, you are having some seminar. And we have a very special session today. And welcome to the PDPA advisory, basically, beefing up data protection and privacy in your organization for the new normal, because we have a new normal way of doing business and things like that. It is a collaborative webinar between Singapore Indian Chamber of Commerce and Straits Interactive Pte. Limited. It is my pleasure to open this webinar as it is a useful topic for businesses, not only during this challenging period, but also as business looks to the future. At this point, I would like to thank our chairman, Dr. T. Chandru, my fellow board directors, our CEO, Mr. John Paul, our speakers, Mr. Alvin To and Mr. Dominic Ng, the staff of Straits Interactive, and our secretariat staff in organizing this event, special event. For those of whom may not be aware, SICCI has served the needs of the local Indian businesses and the business community at large since 1924. It's almost 100 years now. SICCI strives to give its members a competitive edge in the global market by providing them with diverse insight connections and support services. These includes trade matching, job matching, business advisory, networking sessions, seminars, and trainings, different kinds of training. SICCI aims to be the gateway of opportunity for Indian businesses in Singapore, helping both homegrown and international companies realize their full potential. And our SME Center has customized information services for these SMEs as well. SICCI has also established an international business division to serve the globalization needs of local companies. With such services, SICCI hopes to further its members' interests at large. As the title of today's webinar suggests, this discussion is centered around amendments to the Personal Data Protection Act, shortly known as PDPA, which ensures the security of one's personal information. The Singapore government takes personal data very seriously, emphasizes the need for such information to be secure to ensure the privacy of individuals. All businesses and organizations operating in Singapore must take great care to abide by the PDPA guidelines and have compliance on that. The PDPA was recently revised and there are some amendments to the Act in the coming months and recently. It can often be challenging for businesses and organizations to make sense of the changes and how they can adhere to the updated best practices and compliance. To help us understand the changes and how we can all ensure we adhere to this PDPA guidelines, we have our esteemed speakers today here, Mr. Alvin To from Straits Interactive and Mr. Dominic Ng from the Infocom Media Development Authority, IMDA. And Mr. Alvin will, in the end, moderate the session and this discussion. I believe as the business community enters a phase of recovery from COVID-19 and continue to digitalize, data protection will become increasingly vital. Thus, information on best practices and enforcement guidelines will be invaluable, and I'm grateful to learn as much as I can during this webinar. Now, without any further delay, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. First is Mr. Alvin To, the Chief Marketing Officer and Head of International Operations of Straits Interactive. He drives marketing strategy, awareness, and partner relationship for the company's innovative policy solutions for a responsible marketing. With his extensive knowledge of regulatory requirements, Mr. To is also regional speaker on data protection and privacy management. Secondly, we have Mr. Dominic Ng, who is the Data Protection Certifications Manager of IMDA. He is passionate about helping organizations understand the importance and benefits of a robust data protection standards in the modern digital economy. IMDA data protection certification can give businesses peace of mind and provide them with a competitive edge both locally and internationally. And I hope this webinar would be very useful, all of you, all the participants who are listening today, and hopefully you will apply and go through the guidelines and whatever we can learn from this session. Thanks, and I would like to invite Mr. Alvin To to go ahead to start this session. Alvin, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Ali. So, namaste and matiya vanakkam to everybody here. It's a Friday. Thank you for coming. So, actually, we'd like to get to know what kind of industry you're from, and also let you all try out two things. Number one, can you all go and click on the chat button, type in what industry you're from, okay? Number two, after you type in industry, let's see so that we make sure this thing is working. So you all type in the chat, what industry are you from? Okay, so whether you're in finance or you're legal, right? So put that in, because today we're hoping to be having a conversation with you. It's not a one-way broadcast, and we would like to serve you, right? In terms of what kind of questions you have, your kind of industry. You know, I have various stories and examples, so I must make sure I serve it according to, you know, what the crowd is here today, right? And Dom is here with me as well. Dom, you want to say hi to them? As
Hi.
we are seeing what kind of...
Hi everyone.
All right. So Dominic is involved in a data protection trust mark. This is a very big deal in Singapore. Construction. Okay, excellent. So you're key in there. Those who are keyed in, the other thing I want you to click on is the Q&A button, okay? Go there and put in your questions. Now, today is a time that you can put any question. No question is too basic. And there's no fine if you don't know, all right? So this is the safest place for you to put in something about data protection, whether your impression or things you heard, you know, or how do you go about it. Put in there, because at the end of this talk later on, we will have a question and answer. We want to make sure today's session serve you, right? It's not one-way broadcast. Otherwise, I can just send you a video, right? So we want to have a conversation with you, right? So guys, excellent. I see education. Namaste. Okay, education. Excellent. Construction, security. All right. So consultant. Yeah. So what kind of consultant? Marketing tech. Excellent. Excellent. Right. Food manufacturing. Yeah. So, you know, the PDPA itself, right, does not discriminate between industries. Okay. So that is something that it applies to whether you're a one-man shop or you're a 1,000-man company. Right? Whether you're B2C or you're B2B, whether you're profit making or you're non-profit, right? So that is why I wanted to know what kind of industry you're from, because we got so many stories. We really want to make sure that we contextualize it for you. Real estate, excellent. We are very, very much in all the big real estate companies, because this is one of the highest risk industry that when the PDPA started with the do not call, that was the biggest complaint with real estate and the financial industry. Okay, so yeah, click on the Q&A. I see somebody's keyed in there as well. So as I'm going along and Dominic going along, put in your questions. We will answer your questions definitely. Okay, guys. So, and phrase your questions so that we can understand what it means, because we have no chance to talk to you, right? So we must be able to understand your questions. So don't just put one liner. Explain a bit more what you want to know, and we'll be as accurate as we can. Okay. So that's great. Excellent. I'm seeing the feedbacks coming in. So let me start, right? If you see this particular thing, let me share my screen right now. Excellent. Keep typing in, okay? So that we know that it's working and we can hear from you. So, Data Protection Excellence Network. Now, my company runs this in the region. We are the largest community of compliance professionals in the region and numbering thousands. And right now, we have data protection excellence centers that we partner with. In Singapore, our partner is the Singapore Management University. That's our data protection excellence center partner. We have various data protection excellence centers in the region with top universities in different countries. Okay. So we look at data protection laws across the region. And in ASEAN, you have two countries that are going to come up with new laws very soon, which is Indonesia and Thailand. Okay, so we also have been privileged to train the regulators from there as well, because they fly to Singapore to learn about international best practice. Okay, so before I go further, I'm going to play a video, and you all look at this video from a lens, right? I'm sure many of you have been digitalizing your company because of this COVID, right? And our government has been putting a lot of money for you to digitalize, right? What does it mean when you're talking about personalization to an extreme? And consider both the issue of security and privacy here. This is a funny video, so sit back and relax and watch, and then we can have a short discussion on the chat afterwards, yeah?
Good evening, sir. Thank you for calling Hot and Fast Pizzas. Can I have...
I want to order a pizza.
Surely, sir. Can I have your multi-purpose identification number?
One sec. It's RSP 0603-1983-MI.
Thank you for the number, sir. Am I speaking with Mr. Rajneesh Puri from Baikala, Mumbai?
Yes.
The number from which you're calling is 9191930484, and your residential number is 22223244.
Yes. But how do you know all this?
We are connected to the system, sir. We have all the related information.
Thank you, sir. Good. I want to order a regular size seafood pizza.
Sure, sir. But that's not a good idea.
What do you mean?
As per your last medical records at Bombay Hospital, dated 9th August 2015, you have high blood pressure and a high cholesterol level, sir.
What are you saying?
As I said, we are connected to the system, sir.
Oh shit. Okay. Then what would you recommend?
Try a low-fat super veggie delight Mexican pizza. You will like it.
And how can you say that?
As you borrowed a book titled Popular Mexican Food from National Library last month, which is overdue to be returned, sir.
Okay, I give up. See, I'm very hungry. Send me one of those. How much would it cost?
The total cost is rupees 365, including taxes, sir.
Okay, fine. You send the pizza. I'll pay for it by my credit card, okay?
I'm afraid you have to pay us by cash, sir. Your only active credit card of Apex Bank is over the limit, and amount due is rupees 79,765 since July 2015. That's not including the late payment charges on your last cash withdrawal.
That's fine. You send the pizza. Good evening, sir. I guess I will have to go to the ATM in the next lane.
Sorry to inform, but you can't, sir. You have reached your daily cash limits, which was withdrawn at an ATM at Domestic Airport Terminal B when your wife took a flight to New Delhi today.
Damn it. How do you know?
As I said, we are connected.
Yes, you're connected to the system. Just 25 minutes. You send the pizza. I'll pay by cash. How long would it take?
25 minutes, sir. But if you can't wait, as you said earlier, that you're very hungry, you can always come to our nearest outlet.
What?
As you're just 4 minutes away from our nearest outlet in your area, and you have a car of number MS01XC3484, your Cassie brand.
Oh God, how the hell you
As
know?
I said to you earlier, we are connected to the system, sir.
What the? I just want my pizza.
Okay, your order is confirmed, sir. Anything else, sir?
Nothing. Would I be getting the 3 bottles of cola mentioned in your menu?
We normally would, sir. But based on your medical records, you're also a diabetic and...
Enough! Send the cola around, you bitch!
I request you, please do not use such language, sir. You were convicted on 13th March 2015 for using abusive language to a policeman.
What?
And you were also arrested for misbehaving with a lady in a party.
Shut up! Just shut up, you bitch!
So with that, actually after he puts down, he gets a call for anger management. But guys, this is what extreme personalization could look like, right? So maybe your time in the chat, do you all feel there was a breach, right? I guess that's the only way to communicate with you guys. What kind of breach do you think there was one, right? Do you think it was a security breach, privacy breach? So type in the chat, go ahead, right? And really you can see, you feel something's not quite right, okay? Most of the time I get half in terms of a crowd saying that, hey, I think it's a security breach. So let me ask you a question, right? That particular operator, did she hack anywhere to get the data? No, right? She was supplied the data through her terminal, a customer relationship management software, right? That had all these records given to her. And yet you feel violated. So ladies and gentlemen, in the era right now we're in, where we're doing all kind of digitalization, where data is the new oil, the Personal Data Protection Act seeks to protect the privacy of this information. Let me just differentiate for you. The red circle is security, which most of us are familiar with. And it covers really the three things we call the CIA, right? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. So even if you have the best cybersecurity practice internally on your software and your company, doesn't mean you handle the blue circle, which is privacy, okay? Privacy has to do with notice and choice, right? Confidentiality and usage and access is where the two worlds meets. What does that mean? In simple terms, just because you have access to the data doesn't mean you can use it, okay? If you've not done certain things required under the Privacy Act or Data Protection Act here. So many companies mistake their cybersecurity posture to be their data protection posture just because it sounds like it's data protection, okay? So this is something that as a company, you need to be very aware, right? Just because you have security is not the same that you have compliant to the Personal Data Protection Act. Okay, so this is something that in Singapore, cybersecurity is not regulated across all industries. Certain industries, they have rules like the monetary one, the health one, right? And the critical infrastructure, they're under the Cybersecurity Agency. Most of you are probably not. However, data protection is regulated across all companies, right? No exceptions. So that is something that you need to be aware of. So you cannot say that, oh, I don't think I'm so small, I won't be caught, or it doesn't apply to me. There's no such thing, right? It's a 1 or 0 game, okay? Versus security, you can do some, you can do more, depending on what you think is relevant for you. But there isn't a regulation to tell you, how much you need to do. But you come to privacy or data protection, there is a law governing that. And that's where the two worlds meets, right? So in Singapore, we like to use the word same, but different. These additional 2 circles, I put down there, all these 4-letter numbers, they are standards. For some of you here who are a bit more well-informed, what standards are there? If you are in security, I saw some of you are a consultant, and MarTech and all that. You probably know that, if you're supplying solutions, you want to make sure that you adhere to like ISO 27000. That's a cybersecurity, or that's the info security standard. Right now, that standard has privacy extensions as well, right? Because the two worlds are starting to meld, okay? So that's why I said data protection is regulated, which is why even if you are a vendor who has good security standards, you want to make sure you actually can demonstrate accountability in data protection. Okay, and there are a couple of standards you can actually adhere to. One is the 27701, right? And then the other one, of course, locally is the trust mark, which Dominic will talk about afterwards. Okay, so today we're talking about roadmap to managing your data protection trust mark, data breach management, and third-party risk. And that has come up to be a very hot topic in recent year. Okay, so after that, I'm going to be covering about, in deep dive, data protection, top 5 trends that happened last year, we project will happen this year, okay? And what have been the new developments, as Dr. Ali mentioned, the new amendments in the PDPA. Then I'll take a focus on the enforcement right? Enforcement has been going on despite COVID. And what are the lessons you can draw from there, from different industries? And what can you do as a company for a robust data protection management program? Okay. And last one, no MRT. How many of you are facing that? No money, no resource, no time for data protection, right? There is good news. Stay to the end. I'm going to show you 5 buckets of funding possible. So really, you got no excuse, and then resources you can get, and then doesn't take as long as you think it would take. After that, I will have Dominic also talk about data protection trust mark. DPTM stands for data protection trust mark, right? And what the IMDA, right, is supporting in terms of companies looking at this, right? So coming back to a real world case about security and privacy. You probably remember this case 2 elections ago in the US, where this company called Cambridge Analytica brought in the news in terms of, they were able to profile US citizens because somebody filled in, once you fill in a survey form, right, some of those fun ones, Cambridge Analytica was able to get 50 of your friends profiled, and then after that, they gathered hundreds of millions of records. And there was a claim that they manipulated the US election in 2016 because they had targeted ads. You like guns? They will say, oh, Trump like guns. The candidate doesn't do that. You like animals? Then they say, oh, this person is like that. And then they target the ads and they swing, right? The ads according to the particular person profile. But how did they get the profile data? One person fill in, they get 50 friends data. And that's why people felt violated. How can you go and grab my friend's personal data without permission? But guess what? It was an API, application programming interface, allowed by Facebook. So there was no hacking. So here wasn't a breach of security. It was a breach of privacy, data protection. I use the 2 words interchangeably, right? Because in the US use a lot of privacy, and the European world and outside of the world use data protection, right? So this case, I wanted to highlight because it's the quickness, how a firm can be taken down. Cambridge Analytica had 50 million euros at the point in time when this thing blew up. Within 6 months, 6 months, they haven't been fined yet, still being investigated. They collapsed as a company, bankrupt. Okay, so because of the political fallout, because of all the reputation damage, a lot of customers worldwide pull out. Even with 15 million euros, they couldn't survive, and they haven't been fined yet. So, ladies and gentlemen, reputation damage can do a lot more and a lot faster, right? And in higher scale of damage to your company than a fine, right? So not something to be taken lightly for yourself, right? So that's why the social media, it can take a life of its own when data breach happens, especially to a firm that is well known. So as a company, we are focused on operational compliance, right? We are Trustmark certified company, right? So one of the 43 in Singapore right now. And we had the largest team of internationally certified consultants because we train people in these international certification for privacy. We are the appointed regional trainers in this area. Okay. And we also train people in OSAC, Open Compliance Ethics Group, in GRC, Governance, Risk and Compliance. Dr. Ali, that's your kind of area, right? And we have trained actually also regulator teams because they want to benchmark against international standards. So they come at 10 in terms of what are the international standards. Remember, the Personal Data Protection Act are enacted in each country for the purpose of engendering trust of that country, right, on a global trade, right? Because now trade, a lot of it has to do with exchange of data. That's why there is this regime of data protection, right? Because personal data now is flowing everywhere. In fact, you hold a phone, right? There's a lot of personal data that's being tracked about you, shared to many, many parties. That's why you can see a lot of regulations coming in play to do that, right? So we've been privileged to train regulators in region. I mentioned 2 regulators are going to come up soon. So that is something that we are keeping our eye on, right? And this is something we have produced as well, which is the Data Protection Breaches book. And it's now 2nd edition, and it's now the reference book for the international certification course as well. And it's gone worldwide. So something to be proud of from a little dot in the world map. The good news, we have more than 20, maybe now I was told double of that, offerings related to data protection and governance risk compliance and all of them are funded. Okay, I will show you this at the end, second half of my presentation, these buckets of funding and what you can do and the roadmap. So let me just now switch to what are the top 5 data protection trends we are seeing. Number 1, in 2021, we're going to see organizations shift towards GRC, stands for governance, risk, compliance in their operations. Why? Our regulators are now asking for more accountability, not just compliance. People think compliance is okay. I just give you, I got this policy, that policy is not enough. Later, I'll show you the top 5 questions in an accountability audit now, or when you are being investigated. The kind of evidence they ask for is no longer just paper waving, okay? Right? So there is now a move towards more governance, risk, and compliance. So Dr. Ali, later we can talk about this, right? What it means to be having a robust governance, risk, and compliance posture in a company. The renewed focus on importance of third party. As I speak to you right now, there's a big third party breach that's going on, Singtel, right? You all read in the papers, 100,000 members data. I got SMS from Singtel as well, right? That somebody managed to get personal data of customers through an outdated equipment, right? And this thing has made big news, and probably, right, PDPA might take action against Singtel for that. So we'll see, right? It's still under investigation, but you can see, right, the amount of news that's swirling around and all the chatter that's on the social media. If you are a smaller company, right, the amount of damage control that you have to do is not small, right? Next, cybersecurity, right, related to the Singtel case, but there has been other cases, right, that has been on the rise. In fact, some of you who are working from home probably are getting all these scams where they try to let you click on your, they block your computer and ask you to click for support. You get a call to actually a call center in India who pretend to be Microsoft support, right? And they scam you for your credit card details. Some of them take over your computer and erase your data. Okay, so that's happening right now. Cybersecurity threats are rising, and much easier for the hackers because why? Most of us are working from home and our home network are not secure. The laptop and the devices you use probably are not secure as well, right? And you may even share with your kids because of home-based learning. So you can see the security actually has dropped a couple of notches, right? Next, EU GDPR. Now, the EU has the strictest standard of data protection laws in the world, called the General Data Protection Regulation, right, across all the 27 countries. And the ISO, next other standard is the ISO 27701. These two are now the benchmarks regionally, right, or globally that people are aligning to, right? The laws for Indonesia and Thailand that's coming out is benchmarked very closely to the GDPR. So it's a Filipino one, okay? Singapore, we have been making a lot of changes in our laws. Some of our changes, which I'll cover afterwards, are also very closely mirroring the GDPR's requirements, right? Again, why? Because we have free trade agreements across the world and with the EU bloc, right? It only benefits us if our own companies adhere to laws that are recognized in terms of level of sophistication and level of regulation, right? That matches theirs. Okay, so that's why, I told you, right, the data protection laws in each country is enacted is meant for trust in a global economy, right? Not just meant to protect your own privacy, right? So this is something that you can see alignment of the rules, right, across the region. In fact, Dominic will speak about it afterwards. And certification. For those of you who are doing data protection, the good news is that there are many, many big companies have appeared here. Recently, ByteDance and all that have set up. Tesla is setting up. When they set up here, they will be hiring, right, compliance people. And we are already seeing an uptick in people hiring for data protection because it's mandatory in Singapore to have DPO and all that. They are looking for international certification. Okay. If we had another webinar that we did, by all means, go to our DPEX network. Later, we'll send you a link that's free there. We talk about our survey of the jobs. Data protection is outgrowing cybersecurity jobs, right? So if you have a data protection certification, that's worth itself in gold going forward in this new normal, right? Because all of us are digitalizing and data protection, like I told you, is regulated. Okay, so coming to the new normal, COVID. there were at least 4 key activities that came out of COVID, right? One was the safe management practices. You know, you got to record temperature and then all the tracking. And then you have your survey, your forms, your workflow has changed. You're signing documents now online at home, right? Remote working, you're doing Zoom as well, all this. So these 4 activities touches personal data, but at the edges, right? So safe management practice, for example, personal data you never had before, right? Where do people go, temperature and all that kind of things. Now that you collected it over last year, how did you keep it and how did you destroy it? Some firms have no idea. And some firms, I don't know whether you've been, right? Especially the retail or the F&B, the staff put the list out there to ask you to write, especially those that doesn't have the scan. And write down temperature and name, right? You know, if you're number 10, you can see 1 to 9, right? Telephone number, name, and the temperature. That, ladies and gentlemen, is an immediate breach of personal data, okay? And this has happened in a security guard incident where the 2 security companies in condo put a list like that on the ledge. People write, somebody took a picture because you knew who you're visiting, what the telephone number was, who the person is. And the 2 companies were taken to task by the PDPC, Personal Data Protection Commission, for an exposure of personal data, right? So something as simple as that is considered already a breach in personal data protection, okay? Next thing is, of course, your online forms and other things. Now you're sending easily across, and there have been many people making mistakes sending forms, Excel spreadsheets, right, to the wrong people. This has become a very major issue where staff are not well trained in terms of protecting this kind of information, right? Then remote working is the other one, right? I told you your devices need taken. I have a company, they didn't issue laptops. The staff actually took the whole PC from the desktop and took it home, right? That desktop used to be sitting in an internal secure network. Now it's sitting at home. So how is it protected? We don't know, but all sensitive data that's in the hard drive is now at home, okay? So you can see, is your data protection officer, if you got one, consulted in this rushed practice during the COVID, right? And if not, then it's a good time to start looking at that, right? Next thing out of COVID was digitalization, the resilience budget and all that. Yesterday, I understand now a number of you attended the webinar, right? Entrepreneurship and the budget, yeah? So the government is putting a lot of money to support firms. And one of the biggest initiatives was that you need to pivot to digitalize, right? Because you may not have brick and mortar kind of footfall. You have to reach people online, including all the hawkers and the food, right? F&B guys. But let me ask you this. If you have taken advantage of these schemes where, you know, there's big funding for this digitalization effort, did you look at whether those particular vendors, right, have good and sound data protection practice? You probably never asked of that. But let me just state to you, the PDPC and the rule of law, you can delegate the task, but you cannot delegate your responsibility. Ultimately, the due diligence on whether the vendor knows PDPA and it's not the weakest link is actually your responsibility. Okay, so that's something to ask if you have been digitalizing, to look at your contract whether they actually meet PDPA compliance. If not, it's probably a good time to just send them a WhatsApp right now. Okay, so push for digitalization by MES. I saw some of you are from the insurance or the financial industry. MES, interestingly enough, has recently announced the additional guidelines for technology risk management. I'll go through afterwards. So third-party risk has become a major focus in data protection, right? The Singtel case, right? And the other breaches happen. My question to you, you could be both. Are you a vendor, right? A technology vendor, for example? Or are you also appointing new vendors for digitalization? On both sides, okay, do you have ability to either the first one go through due diligence by the tenderer, or second one, do you know how to do a proper due diligence on your vendor for compliance towards data protection, which is regulated? If any of you are doing business with the government, this is what they've issued, right? All third parties doing business with government must be subject to PDPA. And right now we are seeing that appearing in some of the tenders, they not only say that you must be subject to it, how do you prove that? They're asking, can you show me proof? For example, a data protection trust mark, especially for the big and sensitive tenders. So if you ask what is that, then you know you're not very high on the list now, right? Okay, so data due diligence on your third party. This is a course that we actually have, if you're interested, on third party risk management. And we actually have a 4-step process. So when you're asked, how do you due your vendors, and you cannot show that you have a repeatable process, then they know it's very weak, right? And you're systemically weak in terms in this area. And like I told you, right, a lot of the enforcement a lot of breaches have been due to weak third parties. So you want to show that you actually have a robust third party risk management process, okay? So this is one thing that we have recently launched, and it's 90% funded. You can click the feedback form later. We'll send you a link there, right, in the chat. Next thing to look at. There are now additional push from vertical industry authorities. I'll give you a couple examples. Just now I showed you MES, right? Another 2 authorities. One is the Energy Market Authority. Some of you have been getting all the, the alternative electricity suppliers, right, retailers. Okay. Guess what? That particular authority has issued that all the providers below meet a certain standard of data protection, right, that mirrors the data protection trust mark standards. And they're supposed to submit a report card by December, right? Half of them actually we consult for them because they needed to produce a report card on where they stand and how are they going to comply to that standard. So this is one vertical industry. If you are one of the other industry, guess what? More authorities are going to be asking that, because I told you, remember, there's not a top 5 trends. More accountability on governance risk compliance, right? The other one, on the other end of the spectrum, the non-profit sector, the National Council of Social Services have also come out and said that we want the social service agencies, non-profit, right, to meet minimum standard of data protection. They are even willing to fund, right, for the basic one, the small guys, $6,000. Those who are going for trust mark, they only fund up to $100,000, right? So that's a carrot approach. The other one was based on the energy market, was based on the standards approach. So guys, you can see 2 different ends of regulators, right, who have sent very clear signals. You need to get your act together and meet certain standards, and you need to be accountable and demonstrably accountable, not just do it on a voluntary basis based on what you perceive to be enough. Okay. Monetary Authority, that's the latest one. They issued additional guidelines for third-party risk management. So 7 key areas. I won't go through details, but I'll tell you the highlights. Yeah. Okay. Roles and responsibility of board directors have expanded. Now they're going to hold you accountable if you're a board of financial company. Yeah. Right. You ensure that you have stringent assessments of third parties. Okay. Right. And especially those who can connect to your systems. You must have a cyber incident response and management program. Okay, not just say that you have vendor, they want to see a program internally, right, run by somebody. You must have cyber security assessments. So take these 2 words down. If you don't know what it means, that means you probably want to make sure you either, if you're a vendor, have them. If not, ask this from your vendor. If you have people who are running cloud or this thing for you. Okay, ready? Two keywords. First one is PT, the other one is called VA. PT stands for penetration testing. VA stands for vulnerability assessments. If these 2, your vendor say don't know what it is, it's a red flag for you, especially if they're IT vendor for you. Okay. If you're a vendor, you don't have any of these, be ready to produce it, because I can tell you more and more duty you're going to be asking. In MAS case, if you're working for financial firms, you need to have this, right? Minimum. Right. So regular simulation of attacks. MAS expect you to be able to do that, right? Threat monitoring and information sharing, right? Especially to regulators. So you can see, they are now tightening up, right, in terms of your third-party risk, because this has become a major issue coming out of 2020. Okay, so are you ready, whether you're a vendor or you have vendors? right? So now let me shift to now what Dr. Ali was saying, the changes in the PDPA. So before that, if some of you don't know PDPA, let me just give you some keywords. Okay, this is a 4-letter word, friendly, business friendly one. So if you got a pen paper, ready? There are 4 activities that will cover you or subject you to the data protection law, whether in Singapore or other countries, okay, if they have one. Okay, remember the 4 letters? C, U, D, S. So write it down, C, U, D, S. Okay, it stands for 4 activities. Collection, use, disclose, and store. Right? Collection, use, disclose, and store of personal data. If you do any of these 4 activities, you will be subjected to the Personal Data Protection Act. For example, if you're in Singapore, if you are operating in Malaysia, you'll be subjected to PDPA in Malaysia, right? So if you do any of these 4 activities, now, later I'll show you, because of this, it doesn't mean only the guys who are collecting data is the one who is most culpable. Okay, because the activity spans across different stakeholders in your organization. Okay, so let's look at collection. It can be people doing orders, referral programs, right? You have online. Now we don't do much roadshow. Hey, if you are doing new website, got cookies, you gotta be aware of that. Financial firms, you are doing KYC, right? Clients who can log on to your system, right? To submit forms, your websites, all these are collection points, okay? And so it could be different people who are collecting. It could be HR, it could be marketing, right? Okay. Use of data. Maybe you need the data for verification identity. So it may be collected by marketing. Maybe you're at the back, you have somebody who is doing verification. Could be finance, could be operations, right? If you're a hospital, maybe it could be the nursing side, right? So those guys are using personal data collected by another department, right? Processing a payment, finance is involved, compliance, internal audit, right? And then responding and handling of processing of queries, complaints. So you could have customer support. Okay, so those guys are using data as well, right? Disclosure, storage. Storage, if it's mostly IT, technology-based information, then it's IT. If it's physical, it could be another department, right? Okay. But look at all these storage points. Who is responsible, right? Last, you may be transferring data. So where could you be transferring data? You could be transferring to outsourced services. You could be transferring to authorities, IRAS, MES, CPF, MOH, right? Okay. Partners, if you have co-marketing, call centers, maybe a printing companies are printing your bills or your reports, right? So who are responsible? Or maybe in logistics, some of you have to have third party to send stuff out. Then you're sending them data, right? To send to your customer, either your food or your equipment, right? Or your goods, and you're using third party logistics, okay? So remember, collect, use, disclose, and store. You saw all those collection points are gathered under the PDPA. So let me talk about breaches, okay? I'll switch gear. There are 6, from what we saw in all the breaches, there are 6 key areas that most SMEs have fallen in, right? Number 1, no or untrained DPO. DPO is a Data Protection Officer, and it's mandatory in Singapore, okay? If you haven't got one, the highest ranking officer is it all right? Okay. Second, staff not trained in data protection. Okay, so they're not interested that you have policy that you stick up on your website, but if they ask your reception, they don't know such thing exists, it's considered that you never actually properly train your staff, right, in data protection. Okay. Third, non-compliant vendors. See, the third party risk come in. The number of companies who got implicated because of weak third parties, right? And they never even properly check them. Fourth, data protection principles not applied to processes. This is front and center because of COVID, right? There are a lot of processes you implemented over last year, probably never went through a DPO anyway. And like I told you, personal data is flying around everywhere. Some of it is at home. So some of these processes, they will never check for adhering to data protection principles, right? Weak security. I told you something about a security guard, right? That's just a physical, simple one. One of the more common ones we see, people sending Excel spreadsheets out of names and IC, all that, and it's not protected even, right? So somebody can find it, or you accidentally send the wrong person, or you maybe put on some sort of a Dropbox and other people can find it. It's a problem. Huh? Last one, no clear incident handling. Later, I'll talk about the latest amendments. We actually tighten on this part and have a clock on you. Huh? If you have no way of handling incident within a short time, right, it can blow up very quickly for you. Okay, so not just by regulator, by the social media, and by the news. So let me just go through a few real cases, right? The CDP itself had dividend checks sent out to outdated addresses, right? So, a couple of hundred accounts, right, had this sent to, and the fine is 32,000, okay? Infocorp, it's a Bitcoin company, right? And they had 21 KYC, right? Your client forms downloaded by 15 people through a vulnerability on their website. Okay, if you have portal, and then people can just easily change the parameters and get data, it is a problem because you never do it. So remember just now the two words I showed you, I asked you, right? If you are talking technology vendors, do you have what? PT or VA? Okay, don't just take the word for it. No, I know security, right? So you can see no penetration test or web application vulnerability was conducted, and fine, right? So amicus. So some of you who are having outbound and bind databases, be very careful. This one implicated a financial services firm, right? And the database was found that did not pass through DNC, do not call, right? And was outdated. So both amicus, the supplier, and the financial consultant who took on that was fined, right? And this is something very, very serious because MAS then came in and says, okay, we want to make sure that this thing is noted, what's management going to do about the individual. And at the end of the year, there's a fit and proper review. That particular consultant's career is also hanging by a thread, right? Okay. Logistics. Okay, so same thing. Their tracking page was faulty. And at that point in time, estimated 1.26 million individuals data were exposed. $90,000 fine. Okay. Funding societies, right? So these guys are doing funding. Okay. Crowdfunding. Okay. So same thing. They had a weak website, and you can actually browse other members' data. So guys, the acceleration of digitalization behooves you to make sure that you actually have a tighter due diligence on this new technology, because with greater power of data analytics with you comes greater responsibility on your end to ensure that you actually protect those data adequately, right? So same thing, they had a fine, right? Singapore Accountancy Commission, right? They had 6,000 over dollar records, right, exposed due to a weakness in their system. Okay, $5,000 fine. So whether your profit, now this one is non-profit, right, of all people, the Singapore Accountancy Commission, right? So the PDPC doesn't discriminate, right? What kind of company you are, what kind of organization you are, it applies equally. Okay, so what are the possible breaches, right? I mean, this one, if you're a financial firm, I just quote some example, right? The KYC process you have may not be secure, right? Same thing if you're doing any sort of services that has to do with client interviews and all that, right? Or client information. Orientation program, okay, they'll check, hey, you don't have actually good orientation program for your staff, it's a problem, right? Right now, you all have co-working or that, right? So do people leave stuff around because you have team A, team B? So it's a problem. Data files not kept in secure locations, which is currently quite true because some of you have taken your files home, right? And I don't think you have secure location in your house, right? So your kids may have exposure to your data and all that, and if it's papers, right? And if you're sharing your devices with your family members, it could be a problem, okay? And this is something to be very, very, what happened here? So if you look at breach or even disclosure, sorry, you got to know who you're transferring data to, right? And how you are also even protecting the transfer of data. Remember just now I told you about a spreadsheet, right? Where your password protected. You put stuff in thumb drive. Most of you don't delete thumb drives, right? And you transfer data via this. If somebody finds it and is able to open it, you have a problem, okay? If you're sending things out to another party and you have no proper clauses in protecting the personal data, then the guy said, no, I didn't know you must do that. Then you are taken to task as well. Both of you will be, okay? Case in point here, in terms of an outsourced party, is iHIS and SingHealth, like you know, right? The highest fine in Singapore, 1 million. And iHIS itself was the one, is the outsourced vendor, right? And you remember the tone, right? Hey, if I report this, there's no night, no day, you know. So it shows that if you don't have proper breach escalation process and you know your vendor itself, here they are the vendor, right? It's not strong in this area, it implicates you. So they will fine 750,000, SingHealth was fined 250,000. Okay, right? Equifax had to pay $700 million, right, for a data breach. So I hope I've given you enough insights into the seriousness on how easily you can be implicated, especially if you are working with weak processes or weak third parties. Okay, so let me talk about amendments, right, in a few minutes. What we draw from is that the amendments highlight towards a posture of risk assessment. Okay, they want more accountability from firms. They want to see risk assessments from you. These are the 5 areas in quick summary of the recent amendments that have gone into force 1st February. Accountability, mandatory breach notification, revised consent framework, portability, and enhanced rules. Okay, I'll just dive into 1 or 2. Okay, the accountability side. Okay, let's look at the data breach notification. You will now need to notify within 72 hours if you have major data breach. Yeah, I'll go into more detail. And then increase financial cap. That will probably kick in next year or maybe later this year. They're going to increase the fine to 10% of your global revenue maximum. Right now it's 1 million, right? It could be 10% of your total revenue. Okay, so this is no joke, right? I know we all not doing well already yesterday attending about the talk on entrepreneurship, you know, about getting fund to help you survive. But remember, as you're digitalizing, you have more power of data, you have more responsibility to make sure you safeguard it, right? Growth and pivoting of new business model shouldn't be at the expense of data protection. Yeah. So accountability now, they can even fine individuals. Okay, last time no, now they can fine and jail individuals if you willfully are found in breach of personal data abuse. Okay, right. So data breach I mentioned just now. You even as a data intermediary have to go and notify your own customer. Data intermediary means you're a vendor. Okay. And I showed you what can happen in the case of iHIS and SingHealth, right? If you don't have a data breach response plan that manages the data breach within a short time, now the 72-hour window kick in, right? And you don't have proper crisis communication, it can blow out of proportion. And in the case of Cambridge Analytica, bankrupt the firm, right? In the case of iHIS and SingHealth, maximum fine, some people are fired. If you're a smaller firm, you may not even survive the fallout from the social media, right? Especially if you implicate another bigger firm. So what we did is, you probably recognize the 2 ladies, they're from Channel News Asia. They partner us to conduct a course in crisis communications. So if you like, later on in the survey form, in fact, I think my team now can probably put in the chat, you can open that and click it and leave that as browser, open browser, then you can see the options there, right? So we actually decided to bring in experienced veterans to come in to even do a course like this on crisis comms, right? So you don't need to be data protection officer to take it. We have put this up because it's one of the new skill sets for data protection officer or data protection team, right? So, and we have fun simulations and all that and mock interviews, how to handle the press and how to do a proper crisis communication and a breach plan. A breach plan is now mandatory, right? Under the data protection management program. And if you're audited under Trustmark, they would expect to see it. Okay, so consent, that's another one, right? There have been new exceptions under legitimate interest, business improvement, revised research, right? So if you want, put in the question in Q&A, I can of course talk a bit more if it's something of interest to you, right? So data portability is not kicked in yet. So this one, we will talk about it in the future webinar, right? Right now it's going to be delayed. Probably will kick in later in the year, or maybe 2022, sorry. Yeah, okay. Right, so DNC Spam Control Act, right now, they include, okay, last time you had ongoing relationship, you can do text and fax, and now include voice. However, they also include the WhatsApp and all that, okay? Previously, people say, no lah, SMS and WhatsApp are different. No, there's no more such thing. So people try to split hairs, it's no longer such a case. So be very careful when you want to do all this kind of additional marketing, especially touching people on the phone, right? So what can you do, right? Those are the amendments. You can see tighter fines, higher fines, tighter regulation of certain parts, right? And the breach notification, okay? So update your existing policies if you have got one. If you don't have one, you are already in breach, okay? Review your breach plan. If you don't have one, same thing, get one in. Identify new gaps because of the processes you implemented last 1 year. And make sure you conduct training. In my company, we've been conducting regular training because of this COVID, people working from home. We need to train them in terms of what are work from home policies, what are the new practices you observe, okay? So let me ask you, and remember I told you the 5 questions, if you get audited or you get investigated. So you think about this, what can you show? Ready? What risk assessments have you done? What would you show? What relevant SOP and policies do you have? Maybe most companies can do that. Look at the phrasing of this question. What percentage of your organization has been trained? Not whether you've done any training. What percentage? What does that mean? You actually have to have records to show them. Number 4, how have you maintained the level of awareness of protection and competency organization? What does that mean? It means you must be doing regular testing, not just say they send one email. That was a training. Number 5, has any incident happened before like that, and how do you handle it? They're looking for enforcement discipline internally, right? And how you handle things. So if you can't answer any of these 5, you can answer number 2. They know you're paper waiver, okay? So typical investigation, 18 months, right? If you get investigated under a PDPC. What the PDPC is trying to do is cut down investigation to 6 months, if possible. Or, they themselves are also, having resource crunch, right? But in order to do that, they must make sure that, the firms that they are willing to give this leeway are systemically sound. Those questions I asked you just now, those 5 questions, are looking for systemic weakness. If you can answer all 5 credibly, then it's not a systemic weakness. But if you can't answer all of this, then they know you got no system, right? So the chances of recurring again, whatever breach you're investigated for, is high. Okay. So I'll point out one particular one, it's called undertaking. And I'm going to bring Dom in to talk about this. So the undertaking, the benefit is that you have shorter time to closure. Just not 18 months, you can cut 6 months. Maybe no name and shame. Right now, if you are being investigated, you're permanently in a record in the PDPC website, okay? So if you're going for tender, it's very easy to do DU, right? They just look under the record, anybody who has been enforced before. If your name appear, it could count negatively against you, okay? So something to look at. Or if you're going to do a tender, you can use that as well and look at the vendors who tender to your tender, right? Okay. So it's a very quick look through in terms of who are the party who have been enforced, and then you probably will ask deeper questions about them, right? And outcome may not be per full investigation. Like I say, it can be compressed timeline, and they may be a bit more amenable and take that as risk mitigation, right? Or mitigating factor that you are taking an undertaking. So what's an undertaking? One of it, of course, is that you demonstrate your sound practices through a trust mark. And with this, I'm going to bring on Dominic from IMDA, the trust mark manager. So Dominic, would you like to take on from here? And then I'll come back and talk about the money part.
Yeah, sure. Just let me share my screen first. Okay, cool. Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Dominic, just make sure I'm not on mute. My name is Dominic. As Alvin has mentioned, I'm part of the IMDA Data Protection Certification team. Okay, so we administer a series of data protection certifications, but for today's presentation, I will focus on the data protection trust mark, which Alvin has mentioned in his presentation. Okay, so first of all, I won't go into the details on the importance of data privacy because this has been mostly covered by Alvin. Okay, I just want to highlight some of the perspective from IMDA as a government sector, how we see data privacy. Okay, so so first of all, consumers are increasingly demanding for more privacy. Again, because of the knowledge and understanding, we are dealing with consumers who are highly educated, who follow the news. Like what Alvin pointed out, when the Singtel breach happened, everybody's talking about it on social media. And the second point, digitalization leading to data overload. The very fact that we're having this briefing by Zoom is a testament to how far we've progressed from a physical meeting to adopting digital tools, to move forward, especially in this whole COVID situation. Simply put it, the future of data. Data is the new fuel. In fact, I tend to disagree with that term because fuel is finite, okay, but data is infinite. Okay, it will always be there. It will always be there for organizations to use. And as we encourage the innovation of data, organizations using data in your AI, Internet of Things, and all that, you need to create the environment of trust. Number three, increasing number of data breaches. Okay, so again, this is something that Alvin has shared. More and more cases are coming up, appearing in the news. And in fact, the question we should be asking is not if, but when. This is something that we've always been telling organizations. Okay, it's going to happen soon. For many of us, it's not a matter of if, but it's going to happen, but when. And how do you mitigate that? And last but not least, we want to change the mindset. We want to help organizations shift the mindset that data protection is just compliance. Okay, we want to change that idea of looking at things where it becomes a business differentiator in a digital economy. This will set you apart. If you pay attention to data privacy, if you adopt accountable practices, if you, for example, go for certification, this will help set you apart. Now, IMDA, I mentioned earlier on that we administer 3 certifications. So number one, we have this data protection trust mark, which is a domestic certification. Okay, so this is a made in Singapore certification, currently only recognized in Singapore, and it was launched in January 2019. Okay, on top of that, IMDA, we are also administering 2 certifications on behalf of APAC, which we call the APAC Cross-Border Privacy Rules, as well as the Privacy Recognition for Processes. So I won't talk about the CBPR, PRP. They are relevant if you are a business that does a lot of cross-border transfer of data, especially within the APAC region. So this is something useful for you. But I won't go into details on this, so please feel free to visit our website. Okay, because if I talk about the CBPR, I think I'll need more than 2 hours, together with Trustmark. So I won't go into details on that. So now, the Data Protection Trustmark, what is it about? Okay, it is an enterprise-wide certification that aims to help companies establish and recognize robust data governance standards to help business achieve that competitive advantage and build trust with your clients. 4 key objectives. Number one, strengthen compliance. Yes, this will help you in terms of compliance, but more importantly, it allows you to demonstrate accountability, which is the latest buzzword, especially with the PDPA SICCI amendment. Number 2, it provides companies with a competitive advantage by boosting consumers' confidence in how you manage their personal data. And last but not least, to enhance and promote consistency in data protection standards. At the end of the day, we want to reach that point where when somebody asks you, okay, let's say if you're certified, somebody would ask you, how do you demonstrate that you have good data protection standards in place? All you need to do is to say, I am Trustmark certified, and then that's all. So we want to reach that point. So as mentioned, it is enterprise-wide certification, valid for 3 years, where we look at your data protection policies, your processes, and your practices. I must apologize, I stay beside an airbase, so it's quite busy today. A lot of planes flying around. Okay, so as of today, Alvin mentioned that we have 43. Actually, as of today, we have 45. So yes, its numbers are increasing. In fact, in the last few days. So, naturally, your eyes will gravitate towards the big names like your AIG, your DBS, your Crimson Logic, and all that, Alibaba Cloud. All these are big names. But if you look in the center, okay, Everything is alphabetical order, by the way. If you look at the center, we have quite a few SMEs. In fact, 2/3 of our certified companies are either SMEs or non-profit. So at the end of the day, as long as you are a private organization in Singapore, this is something that will be extremely helpful to you as an organization. Okay, so how do we arrive at our standard? Okay, so the certification standard is based on, naturally, of course, our own PDPA's data protection obligation. We took it one step further. We incorporated international benchmarks and best practices. Your data protection laws from other countries like Australia, Hong Kong, the EU GDPR, as well as international benchmarks like the OECD guidelines, as well as closer to home, the APEC privacy framework, including the CVPR, PRP, to come up with 4 key principles. Okay, and they are: number 1, governance and transparency. Whether the organization has the appropriate data protection policies and practices implemented, and whether these policies, these practices are communicated to stakeholders. Number 2, whether you have we're looking at the management of personal data, where we assess whether the organization has mechanisms in place to obtain the appropriate consent to collect, use, and disclose personal data for the appropriate purposes notified to individuals. Thirdly, now we have looked at, once we have looked at your governance, we have looked at how you manage personal data, including the mechanisms in the CUD of data. We look at how you care for personal data. Okay, where we assess whether the organization has the appropriate information security policies in place, whether you have a retention policy, how long can your data be stored with you, and once there is no purpose for keeping the data, whether there's a disposal policy, how do you get rid of the data? Do you ensure the data is accurate and complete when it's held by you? And last but not least, individuals' rights, where we look at whether the organization has mechanisms to provide for the withdrawal of consent, whether you allow the individuals to access and correct your personal data. Okay, so I'm sure that Alvin, as Straits Interactive, you are certified. You will agree that these are some of the benefits. So we've been collecting all this feedback from organizations. How do they think has helped them? How has the Trustmark helped them? And we've put together these 5 buckets. So number 1, all of the organizations agree on this, that it provides assurance to them as a company. Why? Third-party certification, coming in with neutral, unbiased eyes, looking at your policies, your practices, based on the requirements developed together with the PDPC. During the assessment, if there are any non-compliance, any areas for improvement, any gaps identified, it's okay. What happens is that the assessment body will share with the organization. Okay? You will be notified that, hey, these are the areas that you need to improve. And they will share some best practices will be shared with you. How do you go about improving it? And then, give you the chance to improve. Okay, so it's not like an immediate failure kind of thing, so don't worry. Okay, secondly, it raises business competitiveness. Again, it gives you the competitive edge, having a Trustmark. In fact, true story, many of our certified companies have shared with us that because of the Trustmark, they have gained an advantage in securing contracts, deals. One of our company, TRS Forensics, they secured a European MNC's contract. TRS Forensics is SME, less than 20 packs at that point of time. Small player in Singapore in the field of data forensics. They were invited by this MNC to bid for a contract. They secured the contract. And so they were, of course, in euphoria, very surprised, why did we get the contract? So they were very curious. They went to ask the MNC. The MNC, the general counsel, shared that because this contract involves a lot of sensitive data forensics, data forensics, they need somebody they can trust. While there are many companies out there that can do the job, they noticed that TRS was the only one that had this data protection Trustmark. Again, bear in mind, this is not recognized in around the world, okay? It's only recognized in Singapore for now. But however, that certification demonstrates that TRS has accountable and responsible data protection standards. And that was the reason why they won the contract. Number 3, strengthen customers' trust. All of us agree, trust is something that is very hard to build up. It takes years, it takes many resources to build up. But all it takes is 1 incident, 2 incidents to bring a company down, to bring the trust down. Okay, and a lot of organizations who encountered data breach, right? They share that it's not the financial penalty they fear. It's okay, if I can pay money and rid myself of this things, it's okay, no issue. It's the reputational loss that they fear the most. Money, it's okay, I can earn back the money. Reputational loss, do you know how much effort it takes to build that back? Number 4, demonstrate accountability to regulators. Alvin briefly mentioned on this, where not just in Singapore, but around the world, organizations can demonstrate accountability to regulators through certifications. Okay, specifically, let's zoom down to Singapore. In Singapore's context, the PDPC has come forward to share in their guide to active enforcement that if a company, if you are Trustmark certified and you encounter a data breach, you can request or may be given the option of undertaking. So for some of those, some of you guys in the legal sector, you understand what is an undertaking. Basically, you attest to carry out certain actions, and that would suffice. Okay, so in this case, if you're Trustmark certified, you have demonstrated that you have a robust data breach management plan. And if you're able to carry out that plan to remediate the breach, and then that would be a strong mitigating factor to you as an organization, okay, in lieu of investigation, okay. And last but not least, increases overseas market access. Again, we hear this from many of our certified companies. They've shared that with the Trustmark, they have managed to venture overseas, help to open doors to overseas markets, for the very simple reason why, because Trustmark is administered by IMDA. So it is i.e. administered by the government of Singapore. And with it comes the reputation. You know, thank God we have a good government reputation that, you know, anything that's made in Singapore is associated with stringent quality control, rule of law, positive reputation. And so it brings along that reputation. And it provides the assurance that if you're Trustmark certified, it gives them the assurance, you know, assurance to your consumers, your regulators, your business partners overseas. Okay, some statistics. Okay, last year there was a survey done, consumer industry survey on the PDPA conducted by Nelson Company, where we found that 4 in 5 consumers, they believe that companies that handle personal data should apply for the Trustmark. And 3 in 4 consumers shared that they prefer to purchase from and they're more willing to share personal data with Trustmark certified companies. That is a B2C perspective. But from a B2B perspective, from the industry point of view, 7 in 10 companies prefer to do business with a Trustmark certified company. Why? Under the PDPA, Alvin mentioned earlier on, under the PDPA, if you are a third-party vendor, okay, so give you an example. I'm a client. I engage you as a third-party vendor. If the third-party vendor suffers a data breach, okay, the client cannot say, oh, it's not my responsibility. It's my vendor's fault. You know, nothing to do with me. You know, I don't know. I wasn't involved in the whole process. Unfortunately, under the PDPA, you can't say that. Okay, to a certain degree, certain extent, clients are liable for the actions of the third-party vendors. You can delegate the task, yes, but you cannot delegate responsibility, which Alvin rightly mentioned. And that's the reason why companies say that, you know, yeah, okay, because of that, I prefer to deal with vendors that I trust. So definitely, if you're Trustmark certified, you have that distinct advantage over others that don't. And because of this reason, 2 in 3 companies are keen to apply for the Data Protection Trustmark certification. Okay, so the process, I won't go into details. I will briefly share. IMDA, we are a certification body. We have appointed a panel of third-party assessors right here in the bottom left-hand corner. These are independent assessors. So if after today's presentation, you know, you find that this is something meaningful and you want to embark on, first step, you apply online. You make payment. I'll talk about the cost later. Once your application has been approved, you will receive a self-assessment form, which you will then need to fill up and provide evidences. How are you meeting the requirements? So it's not a yes, no, you need to explain, you know, with your policies, how you're meeting the requirements. And at the same time, you need to select a third-party assessor from our panel. Once you have selected one of the assessors, okay, we have 5 there, feel free to choose one. So someone that you're comfortable with. Once you've selected the assessment body, what happens next is your assessment stage, where the assessment body will take your self-assessment form and conduct a documentation review, making sure that you're answering the questions, making sure you're providing the right evidences, making sure that your policies are robust. Once that is done, there will be an on-site assessment where the assessors will come down to your office, chit-chat with some of your staff, for example, just to make sure that the policies have been implemented on the ground. For example, you know, whether your staff they are aware of what to do when there's a data breach. Okay, again, because we are the weakest link in this whole thing. So on the assessment stage, point 3, remediation. I shared earlier on, what happens is that if they uncover any gaps, if the assessor uncover any gaps in your policies, your practices, they will share it with you and allow you the chance to remediate. And once the remediation is complete, if you complete the assessment, you meet the requirements, the assessment bodies are satisfied, they will submit an assessment report to IMDA. And if we agree with the recommendation from the assessors, then your company will be certified with the Data Protection Trust Mark. Okay, so cost. 2 fees involved. Number 1, application fee of 535 payable to IMDA. Of course, we do have multiple certifications as mentioned earlier on. And for companies who feel that they are more ready, you have the resources in place, the time and effort, you can spare the time and effort, we encourage them to go for multiple certifications. And therefore, there is only one single application fee if you go for multiple certifications. If you're SME, after reading about CBPR, PRP, if you think it makes sense to you, we have waived off the application fee for SMEs till 30th June this year. The second fee, assessment fee. Okay, this is something that we can't really put down because there are many moving parts here. It depends on the size of the organization, based on primarily annual turnover, but also other things like, for example, do you have multiple sites, what's your staff strength, the amount of personal data that you hold on to, that you process, complexity of operations. So all this will contribute to how much it will cost in engaging the assessment body. But just to give you some sense, okay, for a SME, typically it will cost somewhere between 5 to 6K, typically, okay? This is a rough estimate. Of course, if you are encouraged, if you want to get a better idea of how much it will cost for your organization, feel free to talk to the assessment bodies. Get them to give you a non-obligatory quote for the assessment. So usually after this question, after this slide, people ask me, oh, okay, is there any funding? Okay, so yes. Okay, so don't bother to ask. I'll share. There's funding available. Not just for SME, but for any organizations in Singapore, as long as you meet the eligibility criteria. Enterprise Singapore has kindly agreed to support your endeavors in adopting the Data Protection Trust Mark through the Enterprise Development Grant. Okay, so EDG grant. As long as you're eligible here, okay. Generally, some questions they will ask is, if I'm 100% wholly owned subsidiary of MNC. Again, if you don't have this 30% local shareholding, unfortunately, then you do not meet the eligibility criteria. Okay. Yeah, and this funding would cover the assessment fee. Okay, not the full, but a portion of it. Cover the assessment fee as well as any third-party consultancy if you would like to engage a consultant. Okay, the good news is, due to the whole COVID situation, and it was announced in budget 2021, the EDG has been increased. Okay, the quantum of support used to be 70%. It has been increased to 80% until 31st March 2022. Okay, don't worry, take a deep breath. Okay, so you got about a year. But go for it because of the process. You need some time to do it. Go for it. Start early if you're interested. Okay, this is my last slide. You can visit our website to find out more about our data protection certifications, and also take some time to read about our success stories. We have published a series of success stories where we talk about some of our certified companies, their journey, why did they apply for Trustmark, and how did they benefit from it. If you want to ask questions, if you're interested to find out more, you can drop us an email right here, give us a call. And yeah, that is my end of my presentation.
Excellent, Dom. Thanks. So let me take over the share screen.
Sorry, let me stop. Okay.
No worries. Let me take over from there. Okay, guys, as I'm sharing my screen, do type in the chat now if you find this interesting. We'd love to hear from you. Dom now will also be monitoring the chat and enter your questions. We saw a few questions come in. So the guy who was asking about EDG, yes, answered already. All right. So there are more buckets of funding which I'm going to come through right now. Okay, we're going to talk the MRT issue, money, resource, and time. Okay, closest to the entrepreneur's heart. So key our questions by all means. Okay, and we will be answering that in a short while. So let me just proceed in terms of what do I do next. Okay, so if you want to look at your company, you want to look at it at two vectors, right? First vector is actually organizational competency and accountability. Second one is your human competency, okay? So both, right, have roadmaps to it. Let me show you now. In the organizational side, this is actually the privacy maturity ladder, okay? And where are you, right? Are you in the space of ad hoc where you have informal processes, incomplete, and inconsistently applied, or you're not fully documented, do not really cover all aspects, or you fully documented and you have implemented your data protection policy and not just regular SOPs, or you're at managed stage, right, where reviews are conducted, and then the last one, continuous improvement. The minimum standard, guys, is level 3, okay? And this is where they are looking for. We have documented and distributed policy, SOPs, implemented a data protection management program. If you cannot spell this word data protection management program, means you ain't got one, okay? And it's something you need to be very aware of because it is part of the investigation to see whether you have such thing on sustained compliance. They're not interested in people who say, I did it in 2014, right? And hopefully your DPO is trained. And how do you account for that? He has gone through some training and probably a certification. There's right now what they call practitioner certification, and that's the baseline, right? So if you haven't got these things in place, I put down there most popular. We actually do consulting in this area, right? And it can be heavily funded, which I'll talk about it afterwards. But again, this is your baseline. What's the next stage? You want to be stepping towards level of trust mark. This one, we actually do advisory to firms where you have regular audits of your data protection practices, right? And you actually have a team who are also certified. Typically, the successful companies actually have a team of people working as a data protection committee headed by a DPO, right? So we advise companies along these lines. Once they're ready, then they actually go for trust mark. So at the trust mark level, you can exhibit that you have optimized data protection practices as part of your governance risk capability. Okay, so I think Dr. Ali, you will know this now, and you do a lot of M&A. GRC is one thing you look at a lot, right? So the trust mark is something that's very visible because audited by third parties, and something that is the gold standard. Like I said, now I'm beginning to see this appearing in a lot of large tenders. We have people who call us up, they want to do trust mark, and we ask them why. They say, oh, it appeared in some tenders that we're going for. We need to go and put down that we are going to be going for it because that is current duty that they're doing. Because many firms now can't go down and visit you, right? So in absence of that, the best thing is that are you adhering to certain standards that are recognized? So either ISO standard or the trust mark, right? So your question, how do I go about complying with the PDPA? So I typically get these 7 questions in management meetings, and I'll answer them quickly for you, okay? The first one, what is required in the respective data protection law? Actually, this one I gave you an answer already. Remember the 4 activities? So if your management asks you, hey, why should I look at the PDPA? No, your answer will be a question back. Do we do these 4 activities? CUDS, collect, use, disclose, and store personal data. If we do, we are subjected to the PDPA, okay? Where are we in compliance? What on earth do you show? I'll show you afterwards, right? Who needs to get involved? It's not one person alone, unless you're a very small firm. How do you go about complying with the PDPA? There is a method. What are the risks? Now, this is the CFO, CEO question. So these are typically, Dr. Ali, when you're looking at firms, you'll be looking at what are the risks and then how do they mitigate them, right? And this is for all entrepreneurs. You want to know whether are you at risk of PDPA, and then only you can decide your budget. How do you stay compliant and prevent a data breach? Number 6 is actually a regulated question, okay? They don't ask you, are you compliant? Because the law is already 7 years, no? They ask you, how have you stayed compliant, assuming you have been, but you got no DPO, nothing on this thing, then they know actually you're not even compliant. Then that's it, right? The whole can of worms is open up, right? And outright compliance, I think Dominic has spoken about it earlier on, right? So I talk about an approach towards compliance. This is called privacy operation lifecycle. It consists of 4 activities. So I usually make it into a pronounceable acronym, App Store, APSTR, right? App Store. You all download all kind of games, right, onto your phone. App Store. Okay, so 4 activities. First activity, Risk assessment. Remember just now I told you the top 5 data protection trends, a lot of it now, even the amendments, right, feature a lot on risk assessments. So first you need to do a risk assessment on your compliance and risk towards data protection. There are 4 levels of risk assessments I'll show you afterwards. After you do risk assessments, then only are well informed to look at controls, right? That means what are policies you want to put in, whether you tighten up certain part of IT or maybe to change certain physical arrangements of your workflow, right? Those cannot be done, right, in absence of risk assessment, because some firms who came to us say, hey, can you just give us some policy and then for data protection? Usually it doesn't work like that. Nah? There is no, you can just download and then just copy and paste, okay? Because you obviously do not do any risk assessment, you're hoping you just pass by paper waving, okay? Sustain. This one I told you, right? Regulated question, how have you sustained your compliance? They're looking at whether you monitor, you audit, and how you communicate, right? So if you had done no communication in the last 1 year, I'll be surprised, because with the COVID, because so many new processes that came in place, data is flying all over the shop into the households. Did you communicate new policies, right? So monitoring, auditing, communication. Last one is respond. Remember the breach notification obligation I told you about, 72 hours? Do you have a breach plan? If anything happened, are you able to execute this? Then you're ready to notify within 72 hours. So if you haven't got anything, you can unravel that particular incident to a very, very big deal within your company, right? Okay, so who needs to get involved? Remember the CUDS I told you, the 4 activities? So it's easy. You use this particular handle to identify who are the heads. Collection, who collects data? Obviously, your arrow, marketing and sales, you collect the external one, right? Maybe in SICCI's case, you have membership, right? But who else collects data? Employee data, HR. So you have HR involved, right? Collecting internal data. So you have marketing and sales collecting external data, right? Then who use data? Finance. They didn't collect, but you ask them to go and pay people and get money from people. You give them personal data to do so, right? Maybe some of you have data analytics team, right? I saw some of you are from insurance. You may have the para insurers, right? The guys who actually will help you craft the packaging, right? So you are using third parties to help you look at the KYC. After that, give a plan for you, for your customers, right? Then you have the disclosure, CUD, right? So disclosure, who do you disclose to? Like I mentioned, you got procurement, you got logistics, and storage IT. These are the typical guys in a PDPA committee, right? They may not be permanent, but you want them to be there initially when you do your risk assessment, because each of them touch data differently and touch different kind of data, right? And you want them to be at the table so that when you discuss policy and SOP, they are agreeable and they can give sound feedback on this thing, right? A DPO is from one department, cannot do it for all, right? So you want to do this as a best practice. What are the risks? This is a CFO, COO kind of question. What are the risks? Because deal with budgeting. So how do you go about that, right? Remember I told you there are 4 levels of risk assessment. One is of course your compliance risk, whether you have SOP policy according to what the law states. Second one is your inventory. It's not your goods, it's your data inventory, personal data. So what kind of data do you hold? Interestingly enough, you don't know, last September, our government issued a IC guidelines. So if you're still using IC as an identifier for your database, it's a problem. And you're still collecting IC at the front for your shows and whatever not, is a no-go, okay, right? We have worked with firms who have to transition from IC to phone number as an identifier, right? Process risk, how are you processing data, okay? And then project risk, a lot of digitalization going on. Have you evaluated the data protection implication, right? What we call data protection impact assessment. You should do that. So as the management, right? So Dr. Ali, you see on boards, this is what you'll be looking at, right? As senior management, for those of you entrepreneurs and MDs, you want to see, hey, can you tell me in the dashboard, what are the risks? Oh, here I can see, wow, my goodness, which departments are the ones that are not quite there? These are the guys who need help. Because you're not going to understand, you're going to give you section 1, section 2. Here, right? Within 1 minute, you can identify, I think we're not in good shape, right? Okay, and which department need help? Next one, CFO want to know, can you rank for me by risk so that we know which one to prioritize, right? Because you cannot be fixing 20 risks in one quarter, right? And you have finite budget. Now, some of you are also have other priorities to survive and are still transforming or doing digitalization. So this is actually a very useful exercise. It's a risk-based approach in terms of handling a risk. So we actually have this built into our system. And when we consult or we train people, we actually make this available. So our clients actually have looked at the first yellow one, it's called inherent risk. Everybody, just now the stakeholders, they key in their risk, and after that they rank it. And then the CFO can look at the top 5 or top 10. And then these are the ones they say, okay, which are the ones who require money? Then we can prioritize. Yeah. So this is best practice, right? Chartered management accountant, Dr. Ali. Yeah. This is best practice from a board level, from a senior management level. That is what a valuable DPO can do if you can report this way. Yeah. Next, you need to audit. Okay, because everybody can say, yeah, no problem, my process. Until you go around, you can see, right? I can see this is dustbin here. They throw away a form in the dustbin. Half filled because, sorry, cannot take backs. Half filled form is still personal data, right? Exposed. And this could be the most dangerous one. And I can tell you, Straits Times did a cover maybe 4 years ago. The reporter went downstairs around CBD and bought those papers from all the auntie downstairs, $10, and they gave them a stack. Inside that stack are CEO presentation and personal data, pay slips, half-filled forms, HR forms, CVs. Big deal. This one, I tell you, it was a slap in the face for Singapore's reputation. It's our CBD, it's our financial district. At that point in time, PDPC, I think, sent a couple of regulators down, knock on every door and tell them, this is our first and last friendly visit to you. Please tighten up on this practice, right? Because it is our crown jewel, guys. I told you, our PDPA is meant for global trust. So we need to show a high level of accountability in this area. Okay, how many policies, some of you ask, is involved in data protection? I already stuck up one on my website. Guys, there are at least 16 policy and SOP related to a data protection exercise. If you think you only stick up one and you go and get maybe one sample policy, you go and copy and paste from somebody's website, or you go and pay a lawyer $1,000, just get some template, inadequate, okay? The ones we see are be counted. It's about at least 16 policy and SOPs related to data protection. Okay. So after you've done this, right? For those of you here, I notice some of you are a very senior person here. What does a DPO do to help you to make decisions, right? And what kind of reporting do you need? Those of you are DPO, how do you stay relevant to management? Let me give an example how my company, our DP office, report to senior management on a weekly basis. Okay. So remember this APSR? Because of COVID, we actually increase our frequency of update from last time once a quarter to weekly. Why? Because there's so many changes and we need to make decisions quickly, right? So I know the table can be very a lot of words, but just look at the left side first. Remember, see APSR? So we already know the structure. He's going to come in, what kind of risks, then what kind of controls in Protect he's recommending, and of course, how he's sustaining the compliance and any response that we need to know. So straight away, I zoom down on the red color, right? $10,000, of course, that's attract my eye. Wow, okay, why? Sydney approval. Why? Because we validated 3 solutions and it was based on the risk we discussed last week. Okay, let's show me the risk we talk about. Okay, next thing, go down. Oh, hang on. You need management crisis comm involvement. Why? We have a breach and we need to notify PDPC in 2 days time because it's already day 1. Oh, okay, so what do you need? I need to activate crisis comm. Okay, DPO notify the PDPC, but I need these guys. I need the COPCOM head, I need the L&D, learning development head, because it involves training people, involve for training records. I need HR to tell employees what to say and what not to say. IT to go to activate external forensics because it could potentially a hacking incident. I need to go and ask finance to go and talk to cyber insurance, potentially get funding for this. We may have to hire external lawyer or PR firm and forensics. Straight away, the approval is done. Why? Because we already have a format of reporting. So I say, tell me more. Okay. First one, right? The $10,000. I say, what is it about? So straight away, okay, this was the risk. Identified level 7. Level 7 is critical for us. Say, okay, so what happened? We evaluated that we actually need to fix a vulnerable system, right? And we evaluated 3 solutions and we recommend this remote monitoring and management tool. and the best one is 10,000. Approved, because level 7 we agreed that is a risk we have to mitigate within this quarter. All right, decision making done in 3 minutes. Next, data breach. What happened? Oh, okay. Employee's laptop was infected, right? And these were the data involved: photos, IC, credit card, email addresses, postal addresses, mobile numbers of customers. See, that's a big deal. Why must notify? Because it is more than 500 records. And yes, it has sensitive data, both IC and the financial information. So can be potential harm in there. With these two factors, we have to notify the PDPC. Okay. So what do you need from management? I need the support from this. I need to make sure we are able to notify the individuals affected. We need to have a crisis communication team to talk to external stakeholders, right, including putting a press release. We need to have HR to talk to internal stakeholders, right? What to do and what not to do, equally important, right? So you can see this allows the management to support activation of resources. So the DPO is valuable in the management meeting, right? Because it can support with clear data and clear dashboards, right? So that's how we are operating on a sustained basis of data protection, not just policy that we did a few years ago. Let's come down to MRT, right? I'll take the next 7 minutes or so, right? Or maybe 10 minutes. No MRT, no money, no resource, no time. Okay, how many of you have that? You put up your hands, right? Or I've heard a different permutation of this in the organization. I can tell you the honeymoon period is over, okay? Our law has been enacted, enforced since 2014. The amendments have kicked in, the one title ones have kicked in 1st February, just a few weeks ago, okay? So we got no excuse, don't know, right? No money. We are the most blessed country where we actually have many, many buckets of funding. I can tell you there are these 5 buckets here, right? Of funding your journey to data protection and training, okay? Even hiring a person as well. I'll go through in a minute. So if you want to go through data protection, you can have in-house. We do in-house consulting, or you can have the individual via smaller firms to have a DPO and a deputy train, right? I'll just go through in a bit more detail. If you're doing in-house, just give an example of the kind of funding available, right? Let's say 10%, okay, 50,000 can be funded up to 3,000 per head. For just now the committee I mentioned just now, your net is only 19,000, okay, subject to certain conditions. But right now, this one is irrespective whether you SME or not, right? So that's the good news, guys. Okay, so right now I think my team is putting in the chat a link. Click on that, and there's a feedback form. Note down if you need more details on that. Okay, just right inside there. Right. So open up a tab and then make sure you do that. So then it's sent to us, and I'll get the right person to talk to you. Okay. Next, no resource. I'm very overworked. There's not enough people. Guys, look at the orange thing on top. You can get a data protection person and get funded up to $90,000 over a period of 1 year to 18 months. You can stack 2 funding, PCP and Job Growth Initiative. Unheard of. 90,000 is quite a senior person, right? So we actually administer the program together with SMU, who is doing the professional conversion program for data protection, right? It's so well taken up. I think we were the first one to use up the bucket, and right now they have extended it as well. So if you want, again, go and click on that link, put in the feedback form. Yes, I'd like to know more. Then I'll send somebody who knows what more details about this and resources you can get. If you're hiring a new person, you can use this as well. Okay. So there's no excuse, there's no resources. I've never heard any country. We work with so many regulators who actually have this kind of funding for you to get a person to help you in data protection. Okay. All right. Next. In terms of just now the funding, it even includes the training for the guy. Right. The subsidy includes their salary and the training of the person towards data protection. So this one, they can go through the SMU. We have a whole roadmap towards an advanced certificate in data protection, and they can be funded inside there, right? So again, the total money on the table is 90,000 to fund an individual in data protection. Okay. No time. You might think it takes many, many, many months. The good news is that it takes about 6 weeks. Okay, can be done for baseline. Just now remember level 3, right? And only takes about 3 or 5 days of the time, full-time engagement of the committee. Why? Because we're gonna use certain training workshop format, right? So get the persons involved, work together as a team in a workshop style, and then you can get things done. If you try on your own and try to interview individually one by one, it can take a while, right? Small firm is okay, but if you've got many departments, it could be quite unwieldy, right? Okay, so here we found was the most effective. Those who had a committee, right? And then using the framework I mentioned to you, App Store, they get it done within 6 weeks, okay? If you are a small firm, maybe you only got 1 or 2, maybe you got 10 people, you only appoint a DPO, maybe an assistant. We have something called the Data Protection as a Service. This is also listed on the PDPC website, right? When we were launching, we were also part of that, part of the scheme that launched together, right? And this one essentially for a very, very low fee, right? Funded, you get up to 6 months support, right? Hands-on DPO training, you get legal support, right? A professional data protection lawyer, you get a tool, you have e-learning, and then you have a consultant who follow through with you for 6 months in terms of how do you put together a data protection management program, right? So if you're a small firm, somebody asked me just now, I think Dr. Ali, you're asking me earlier on, right? What about small firms, right? Yeah, for the micro small firms, do this. Bigger ones, we do in-house, right? So guys, I told you PDPA doesn't discriminate whether you're big, small, profit, non-profit, right? That's why we have schemes that, can scale, right? Now, if you today want me to go or my team to talk to you a bit more, in the form itself, put down that you would like to have a one-to-one management presentation, right? What I presented to you today, we have a lot more, but we can present to management. We do that all the time. We answer those 7 questions, okay? So again, it's for free. We will do that, right? To talk to your team. So in short, right, the good news I tell you, there's up to 90% funding, right, for training. You can get a tool, right, to help you accelerate. Our whole point, our DNA in Data Protection Excellence Network is to increase productivity and compliance, not to create more work, right? And you get supported by international consultants, international certified consultants. You get access to legal, even within those packages I mentioned to you just now. We are the only one who can do that, right? We have a full data protection roadmap actually, right? Even for yourself, which I'll talk about now in 2 minutes, okay? Now, for those of you who are interested, we do a lot of webinars. I know recently the WhatsApp hoo-ha that went on. Immediately 3 days after that, we created a webinar and we had a regional regulator, a data protection lawyer, a data protection professional, a developer, right? And a psychologist to come on to discuss the issue. What on earth was that WhatsApp saga about? And the recording is available on the DPEX network. So go to dpexnetwork.org and join them, right? We have all these kind of interesting webinars we do, and we have 2 videos a week, okay? So now for you, if you're already a data protection person, right? What's the roadmap for you? So let me tell you the good news I told you just now, right? The job for data protection is the hottest right now in this new normal, okay? But you need to be skilled, right? I told you the big firms are coming in now, putting all these things in their job description. We are seeing that in all the headhunters listing. Okay, so number 1, if you haven't done anything, go to data protection officer training, right? Even if you've been arrowed the job. Next, there are many levels you can do in terms of skill set, right? There is data ethics, there's third-party management. Remember just now? We have added all these things in to give you also an advanced cert, whether in GRC or in data protection. We are the only one in this region who have the roadmap towards an advanced diploma in data protection issued by SMU. The only one, okay? That's why I told you the regulator from Indonesia flew here and then flew to Germany, because these are the 2 places that are issued kind of cert, right? We work with the other universities in the region to issue similar ones, advanced diploma or masters in data protection, okay? So hopefully it shows you this particular career has a lot of bright path ahead. Now, some of you may be looking at business continuity because it's COVID environment. My question to you is that, do you have a systematic way of doing it? We conduct a course in this Okay, there's 10 steps to it. So again, all of what we do in our DNA is systemizing, right? And Dom was saying Singapore brand is, we are all very systematic people. And that's why we are good at doing this. And which is why we are the center for the region, right? Okay, so there are many courses. Go to defectsnetwork.org. In fact, the link, if you click on the link in the chat, my team will put that in, right? Or you put in the feedback form, we will send you more details, right? So I'm gonna now look at questions, okay, and answer your questions. So by all means, key in questions if you have in the chat. We're gonna be looking at questions, and I hope this has been useful for you guys, okay? And we really want to serve you in terms of answering all questions possible. So let's look at the question. First one, okay. Can business data, so key in the questions, I see a couple of questions right now. Can business contact data, right? Name, email, job title, seniority, company name, that is generated and not collected via data aggregation software, be used in direct marketing without provision of consent, considering there was no opportunity of obtaining consent? If yes, are there any restriction? Send volume, request for consent at first available opportunity. Dom, you want to answer that? And then I also add on. These people getting databases using scraping software.
Scraping software and all that.
Dom, can you hear me now? Okay, you're muted. Can you unmute?
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Any thoughts on your side?
Again, this is business contact data. So again, BCI, generator, not generator. I think for us, okay, I'm not the expert on PDPA again, because my focus is on Trustmark. But I can share that as BCI wise, we tend to view personal data different from BCI. So this is one of the, I think we are one of we have one of the different data protection laws around the world where we actually separate. I think another country is Canada. We separate BCI and personal data. So personal data is protected, yes, but BCI is not. Okay. So I look at this question, there are two parts of the question. Again, if you're talking about generating, okay, so BCI data, generated by data aggregation software. Ultimately, okay, I need to know in context to fully understand the question, but based on what I see here is, my take is that if it's using of a BCI, regardless of where you collect data, because again, BCIs, we will assume that it's public information, then I don't think that there's an issue here. As a broad overview response. Yeah.
Okay. So just now when I asked you all enter what kind of industry you're from, I can hazard a guess. This is from a real estate industry one, right? I saw a few entries at real estate. Today, as we stand, we consulted to all the big guys, PropNext, ERA, all those, right? And we did all their do not call and all that. So let me answer this. This is one I got it for many years. Dom mentioned BCI, yes, business contact info. Okay, if you want to do this, if you're insurance or whatever, you're going to do and approach the person based on their title, okay, for either business insurance for their company, or if you're selling property, about office space, expansion for that particular person's role, okay, there's this industrial estate, whatever not. Okay. However, if you're going to do by the way, we have an investment property, okay, that you might be interested in based on their profile, right? Where it becomes now personal solicitation of business, you got a problem, okay, right? Because it is not what the business contact information was for. So again, the guideline is you approach them based on their title for business related information, okay. The minute you approach them for internal prospecting, individual prospecting, you cross the line, right? So that's where the issue about consent on this come up, okay? So I hope that I made that clear for you, because I train many real estate agents. I say the most expensive words you can ever use, by the way, you call up and you pretend to talk about business insurance or your offices, then suddenly you talk about investment opportunities next door. You have an issue, it will cross do not call, right? And that is where many agents got in trouble, right? They use the trick and then thinking, but you know, by the way, usually is the real thing is the by the way after that, right? The intent, right? Next, data portability. Really curious about that lah. Write to us lah, because I think it's I mean, in short, I give you 2 sentences. If you are a technology provider today, right? I'll give you maybe a better one. I'll give you an example. Today, if you switch phones, right? Switch operator from telco, from M1 to Singtel, your number goes across, right? And all your record go across, right? So that is the seamlessness they're looking for, data portability. They don't want people to be locked in to one system and then you say, oh, you cannot transfer your personal data and all that, right? And then, you know, you cannot jump. They want to see a more seamless transfer of data, personal data, so that you are not held ransom, okay, by a particular business of your personal data, okay? So like our healthcare already has electronic medical records, right? Our telco already has that. They're trying to do more of that in businesses that deal with law, you know, in businesses actually, right? So that is the direction going forward. You'll probably kick in a year's time. Right now, it's not fully enforced yet. It's still giving time for people to work it out. I think the standards and all that are still being ironed out. Dom, you have any other insights on that?
No, the regs are still being ironed out. So as of now, we used to have 9 obligations, right? So with the data breach notification, that's the 10th one. So data port will be the 11th one, but because the regs are not out yet, so it's not official. But we are moving towards that. Data portability. Again, like what Alvin says, to align closer to the GDPR, because this is something that the GDPR is already doing. Yeah.
Correct. Right. So all of you are digitalizing. I can tell you, you better ask your vendor whether they can do that now, okay? Right? Because once it kicks in, people will make sure they can port their data out. And it should be what they call machine readable, right? So, you know, we conduct a course on all this, and happy to talk to you more one-to-one so you don't confuse the rest, yeah? But if you're a technology vendor, this is something you probably put on your checklist to do. All right. So any more questions? Wow, okay, coming another one. Are personal email, Gmail associated with a registered business address considered personal or business data? Okay. Are personal email address associated with registered business address personal or, well, like I said, right? Of course, if it's registered with your business, I mean, you put an ACRA, then it's business data, right? But it's how the person use it. Like I said, is where you can take offense, right? Because if the person say, hey, how you get my data, you're obligated to answer under access obligation. Okay, number one, remember there's an obligation under the PDPA called access obligation. The citizens can ask you, hey, how you get my data, how you use it? You have to answer, okay? Otherwise, it's considered a breach. $5,000 fine, you don't answer. Second one, just because the thing appear on the ACRA record, whatever not, you can talk to them, right? Let's say, for example, you know, the title is MD, you can talk to them about the business, but you go and talk to them about personal solicitation and you do not check, do not call, you got a problem. Okay, well, this one is email. Email will be under anti-spam law. Okay, all right? Hopefully you all make sure you clearly delineate. My guideline to you is that if you got it off a business record, just talk business. Don't go and try to do personal solicitation, right? Because you will cross the line why they put their contact for, right? It was meant for business contact. Okay, right? So next, if a professional service provider like agent, insurance or property lost their mobile phone, that WhatsApp contain messages with clients, what is the PDPA remedy for them? Remedy, prepare to get fined. Yeah, I can tell you, if you're insurance property, you have been WhatsApping people's IC or this thing, already you're in breach, okay? Right, because it's not protected, right? And many of you do that, you know, okay? Your best situation right now is make sure you go and encrypt all those information. If you gotta go and take a picture of somebody's IC, right? Find a way to go and encrypt that JPEG. You know, there is a way to do that, right? Don't send it naked, and then it's in your gallery and all that, you know, right? So you have a problem if it's shown that you have not taken steps to protect personal data, and that's under the law. What steps have you taken to protect personal data under your care, right? So if you got no encryption and then it's available in your gallery or that, you got very weak defense, right? Okay, so in fact, the real estate firms we train, yeah, they actually advise their agents to do so, but of course it's hard to enforce, right? But as long as they train you and then you go and bypass and do your way, then you will be taken to account, right? Okay, so be very careful, especially using devices storing personal data unprotected, right? Find ways to encrypt those things, right? So yeah, so good question, right? It is a very big risk because now in the COVID environment, we are doing everything on our devices. Okay, what are the areas where PDPA might work in conjunction with conflict with other countries? What do you mean? What are the areas where PDPA might work in conjunction or conflict with countries' regulation? Okay, so the guide is that the sectorial regulation supersedes the PDPA. Okay, right? So for example, in MES, right? You need to do KYC. Yeah, you need to go and collect all this personal data or this thing. Yes, right? And you need to do it because it's part of the regulation under MES. Okay, and you need to collect IC and all that. And then for anti-money laundering, you need to ask all these things. You need to keep all this. Yes, right? So that one supersedes what PDPA states, for example, right? But it's never in conflict. None of the regulation conflicts with PDPA, okay? Just in case you're wondering. All right, so the level of detail and requirements are probably deeper in the industry regulations, but they're never in conflict with PDPA, okay? Right? So you must understand that, right? PDPA is the overarching one. There may be deeper requirements by certain sectors for how you treat certain personal data. Just now you saw the TRM, right? Under MES, they're even stricter, right? And that's something in MES, if you have a breach, you need to notify within 24 hours, okay? Not 72 hours, right? So they have that, right, in terms of their regulation, but it's always complementary to the PDPA, okay? Right? Is it in conflict in any countries other countries' regulations? Other countries, no lah. Like I said, in the region here, many of them are mapping towards GDPR even, right? It's even stricter. So there won't be a conflict per se. The only one you will see is maybe what they call the data localization. Okay, so that one we can have another conversation with you lah, right? Certain countries say that your certain kind of data needs to be within their country and not out of their borders, right? So, but it's also usually sectorial lah, right? Are there plans for PDP to become more aligned with GDPR? You're already seeing parts of that happening already, right? We never have sensitive security data. We have the IC guidelines. Our data breach notification, GDPR 72 hours. Guess what is it now? Previously, we didn't have a timeline. Now we have 72 hours. Okay. So it doesn't take a genius to know, right? Our alignment is there, right? So you can see Dom was talking about data portability. Hey, the GDPR is already there. So you can see the GDPR standards, right? We are having more and more features of those because it facilitates international trade. Okay, so we actually conduct a course on this and talking about what additional things are coming up. AI is another one that will be interesting to look at, right? Are there any further efforts by MDA or PDPC to increase the volume and get the message out to all business, including what? Entities, even entities like legal firms who might opine that they know all about PDPA simply because, oh, it's sensitive. I'll let Dom answer this one.
Okay, I will answer in a roundabout way. IMDA has always been very active in terms of getting the word out. Okay, so one thing you cannot accuse IMDA or PDPC is that we are not active in terms of churning out publicity materials, your guides, advisory guides. In fact, if you were to go to the PDPC website, right, there's an entire store of resources that organizations can use. That many organizations have used it to their advantage. And so at the end of the day, you can keep pushing it out, whether or not the person wants to listen, or he thinks that whether again, this is just a general statement. I know all, I don't need all these things. That's a different story. That is something that beyond our control. But rest assured, IMDA, we have been pushing out the information. You can see in the news, You everywhere you go, once in a while, especially those who have to, there's a security gantry, security gantry at your workplace or your condominium. Usually there's this little thing that tells you about whether can you collect NIRC and all that kind of stuff. So you will see this all around the place. So yes, we've been trying to roll out as much as we can.
Yeah. So just to tell you, this person will say that even entities like legal firm who may say they know about PDPA, they do try to keep up. And I said we train people on international certification, and we have many law firms, many lawyers who come through our courses. Recently we did one. We had 40 of them, and they are from different firms in Singapore and from the region, different lawyers. Now, just now the third party management course that we have, lawyers attend that as well because it's a structured way of doing things. So I think those who are open-minded in terms of wanting to improve themselves, they do that. And then we have something called Certified Information Privacy Professional Asia. We wrote the curriculum for that. And so we have lawyers attend that because they want to know the regulation in different jurisdictions in Asia and the development. So there we cover Singapore, Hong Kong, India, and then we added in Philippines and Malaysia as well. So then we do a compare contrast, what's the frameworks. So yeah, if you're a lawyer and then you have lawyer friends, yeah, by all means, get them involved in the Data Protection Excellence Network. We work with law firms, right? So that's why we focus on operational side of things. Law firms focus on the legal side of things. But the regulators do investigate both sides and heavily lean on operational compliance, all right, in their investigations. And so does the Data Protection Trust Mark. Okay, so maybe one more question for Dr. Ali. You've been involved in
great presentation, Alvin and Dominic. So I think participants got the real input of what they are into when they are doing business. This is very important nowadays. But I see that the number of take-up is still small in Singapore. I think probably you need reach out to more companies. That's what I look at it. But looking at the SMEs, it's a challenge for them, especially in adapting all this. But since now that you have got all the grants available, it makes it very easy for them to get this organized in their organization, because it's becoming very, very important, because you've got a lot of players around the world trying to get information and use information for unlawful purposes, right? Yeah, so I think we need to contain that. So this is a great opening and a great session. I hope all the participants enjoyed today's event, and we can still continue having other sessions, more particularly for different sectors. Right, Ali? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, man. So no other questions, Dr. Ali. Any questions for us? If not, I guess you can close this.
Yeah. Well, I think we have given an opportunity to all the participants. You have rightly answered. So we are coming to a closing period, and I wish all the participants a very good weekend, and special thanks to Alvin and Dominic for taking all this effort to get into businesses, what they can do, and what are the areas of risk. So most important, companies need to look at their risk assessment and do the needful. Right? Thank you for attending, and thank you very much.
Exactly.
Have a good weekend.
So guys, click on the form in the chat, okay? And then yeah, let us know what you thought, and if you like more. I think Dr. Ali was saying we should do another one. We're happy to hear from you guys. What do you want to know more, right? It is a big topic. Like Dom said, you can talk 2 hours about CVPR and all that. This is a very rich and deep topic, and I said there are many skill sets for the DPO, BCM, risk management, all that, crisis comms. So click on that feedback form. If you'd like us to present to your team and management, we're happy to do so. I'll just schedule one. And then if you need to know more about the grants and all that, like I told you, there are 5 buckets, or the 90,000, right, for funding a data protection person, right? I'll have the right person in my team to talk to you, right? So we only can help you if we can hear back from you. So click on that form right now. And we hope to see you very soon and hope this was useful for you guys. Thanks, Dr. Ali and people from SCCI.
Thank you. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Doc.
Bye.
Hey, thanks, guys.
Thanks.
So click the form, guys, before you jump off, okay? For those who are the call, we love to hear from you. Okay, so I think we can click off.
Okay, man. Okay. Have a good weekend.
Okay, Doc. Thank you very much. And thanks to the dozen who are still behind. We hope you have a good weekend and see you soon.